Okay, so you can see this is about right. The camera's angled just a little bit, but that doesn't make a lot of difference. The back of the gun is just up a little bit higher, and you can see where the belt is in relationship to the grip. That's about right. So again, you can kind of diagnose this in a mirror by looking at where your shoulder moves, if it moves at all when you draw the gun. If it moves, something's wrong with where the gun's positioned. Okay, a little bit of back. All right. Here's a different angle on the front. All right. Okay, so we've got the gun adjusted height-wise and position on the belt and rake. Okay, so basically, you know, somebody looking at the side now sees the gun is either, it looks like the barrel's kind of straight up and down, give or take. Okay, somewhere in that position is going to be what works good. So the final adjustments are going to be, you know, the distance from your body this way, and how the gun is rotated around this rod that runs behind here that also adjusts the rake. So if you're looking at me right here, it would adjust, you know, like this around this axis. Okay, that one's really kind of critical, because if the gun is off from your arm, you know, in relationship to your arm, you'll actually kind of tend to twist the gun in the holster, and that'll bind it up, and it's a lot slower to draw that way. So what we want to do is set the gun up so that this angle, which you can see, I think right now about right here, basically my forearm makes one nice line down to the gun in the direction the gun's pointing. What that's going to cause, it's a natural angle that happens with your body that, you know, everybody's a little bit different. So it's not going to end up with the gun angled over this, you know, like this way, or with the inside of the mag well tucked into your belly or something like that. It's probably going to be right around in this area. But as you bring your arm up, it's naturally going to find a spot, and you want the gun to pretty much be on that angle, so that when you draw it, it comes straight up and out and doesn't get bound up in the holster somehow. Okay, so play with that a little bit. That's those same adjustments, the drag and the height. So use that drag screw to make sure you don't change the height of the holster while you do this, and you know, you can kind of gently move it back and forth until you get the right spot, and then take it off and tighten those big screws back up and get it nice and tight. And then the final adjustment is what distance the gun needs to be from your body. If you don't put any of those spacers in the bottom down here, it's going to be up pretty tight, and you're going to run into your body when you go to draw. You know, you're going to poke yourself with your thumb or something like that. I also like to have the butt of the gun tilted out just a little bit. It works better with my hands and how my arm comes up on the gun, a little more comfortable. So that's what these spacers are for. You know, this big one's probably, you could probably just throw this one away. That's kind of ridiculous. But I've got, there's three flat spacers. By flat I mean there's no like wedge shape to them or anything. There's this really thin one, this really thick one, and then there's one that's just a little thicker than the thin one. I guess you'd call it the medium, but that's the one I've got in mind. And then there's also, there's two wedges that are like this, where this end is thinner and this end is thicker, and then there's one wedge, you know, like this, that's wedged on the I guess the short side instead of the long side. I've got the thicker of the first kind on here as well, set up so that just kicks the grip of the gun out away from my body a little bit. It's not an extreme adjustment. You know, some people do these really goofy things that I think just puts the gun in a really uncomfortable position, and it causes them to either have the gun pointed way off to the side in an appendix type draw, we call it. Like, you'll see people with a gun set up like this in the holster. Not only are they sometimes pointed at their leg with the holster, which is bad, but then they have to draw like this to get up and out. You know, that doesn't work. So ideally what we want is, because of how we've positioned the gun, how we've adjusted it for, you know, this adjustment, I guess we could call that, you know, cant. It's not really cant, but we've adjusted that angle to match up with our forearm. We should be roughly pointed downrange, almost directly at the target, so that when the gun comes out, you can just push it straight out into the target, and you don't sweep in like from this direction or that direction with the muzzle to get onto the target. So you just come straight up and out and push straight out to the target. So something like that. Otherwise, you know, if you're pointed off to the left as it comes up and you come in like this, and the gun hunts around a lot and it's slower to get on target. So okay, I think that's it. It's a pretty simple holster. You know, a couple other things, I guess. If you're walking around with it, set this lock up so that it blocks the top of that little block there. That makes it harder to come out, but the gun will still come out of the holster even when it's fully locked. That's one of the properties of these holsters. The CR Speed holster. There are other race holsters. I don't know if they fit the Sig or not, but where when you put it on lock, it's completely locked. The flip side is, though, there's not much adjustment in the way of tension and stuff, so if the holster's unlocked, it's like really unstable. You can't run around with the gun or anything. This holster, I can run around with the gun with the holster locked. I'm not worried about it coming out. I can take steps with it unlocked. I'm not worried about it coming out. And it's possible to draw through the lock if you like forget to unlock it, which I've done, which is why I switched to this holster. So, oh yeah, the last thing is this holster length here is probably a lot longer than it needs to be for you. You see mine, the muzzle cup is adjusted down almost to the end. I think I've got about another 3/4 of an inch longer I could go this way, but you're probably up in here somewhere. So you can actually trim this holster off, you know, to match the length. If you're never going to run a Sig race gun of some sort, you know, it may not be a bad idea. That would keep extra holster off of your leg. You just take a hacksaw. See how these lines are here? You can kind of pick one of these lines and hacksaw it off at that angle. Use a Dremel or some sandpaper or something to smooth it up, and it'll, you know, shorten the holster up a little bit for you too. Not necessary, but you know, for me, if I ever run, you know, a limited division gun, I can just move this muzzle cup up this way and run the same rig, assuming that I'm using, you know, the same kind of frame and magazines. That way I don't have to change anything about my gear except the length of this muzzle cup, and I can just run a shorter gun. I guess that's about it. Let me know if you have any questions. I think that about covers it. I flew through all that though, so one other adjustment that might be interesting to talk about. When you put the gun in, okay, there's this little white adjustment in there, screw. That keeps the gun from rocking this way in the holster. So what you want to do is you can screw this, you know, loosen it, and it moves up so that you can just lock the gun, and it has just a little teeny bit of play, but not much at all. You don't want it flopping around in there, otherwise a hard bump can knock the gun out of the holster. So this is like a, I don't know what you'd call the adjustment, but it helps sort of stabilize the gun. If it's in the way, screw it back down some more until you can get the gun in the holster and locked without a problem. That's pretty much it, dude. Let me know if you have any questions. All right, have a good one.